everyone, and welcome to the LTH product briefing. I'm Nikki, the CEO of Legal Tech Hub, and I am joined today by Len Hickey, the CEO and founder of Litigaze. Welcome, Len.
Hi, Nikki. Great to be here.
Great to have you on. You're coming all the way from Melbourne. Thank you for that. I know it must be early in your day. Len, for those who don't know, and Litigaze is relatively new to market, has just launched to market, in fact, can you tell us a little bit about the product?
Sure, Nikki. So Litigaze is essentially a litigation management platform for litigators. And our tools are very much focused on helping litigators master all the documents, facts, and issues in their cases, and to be able to join them together in a coherent way that really allows them to get mastery of their own cases.
And there's something quite unique about Litigaze, which I think we'll see, right? About the way that you've set it up.
Yeah, so a key premise of Litigaze is to meet litigators where they already work. So I'm a litigator myself, and I think it's fair to say a lot of litigators face a problem with running their cases, which is how to manage the different data sets they have in cases. So this will obviously include documents in the case, but also you'll end up with lots of facts, so lists of facts, and you'll have lots of legal issues. And our product comes at it from the point of view of seeing that lawyers are already using tools like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel to try and manage these different data sets. But anyone who's used those tools in litigation knows they're a bit of a trial in themselves, and they have lots of drawbacks when it comes to meeting the demands of litigation workflows. And so where Litigaze comes in is pretty much to solve all of those existing problems. So things like searching through your data sets easily, or being able to generate variant tables while keeping the same underlying data. And then on top of that, document annotations and things like that. So we want to come in and effectively say Excel is a good tool in some ways, but there's a lot of gaps, a lot of problems for litigation. So we want to build from that base, but then improve the experience for litigators running their cases.
I love that. It makes it familiar to them. You're meeting them where they like to work, but then building on that to create a better experience, which sounds fantastic. Let's take a look at the platform.
Great. So Litigaze is an Excel-like experience from a software perspective. What you can see in front of us is a familiar table or a spreadsheet layout. I'm currently in my documents view in Litigaze. Just to take a step back, what I propose to do for this demo is to give you a quick overview of the platform. So I'll run through what we're looking at on the screen quickly. But then I really want to look at a particular type of workflow that a litigator would use Litigaze for. So we're going to look at a common scenario of starting with a bunch of documents, wanting to hone in on a subset of documents for a focused review, and then actually doing the review, and we'll end up generating some facts from that and seeing how we can join the dots in our case as part of this workflow. So here you can see, as I said, I'm in my tables document to start. And as Nikki was just mentioning, you were just mentioning in terms of the familiarity of the user experience, we do find that a lot of our users, when they come in, they feel pretty much at home looking at a table like this. So they can see very clearly what we're looking at is a table of documents. We've got different columns that we can fill with different information, and we can just navigate that around the table in a normal way. But as you'll see shortly, there's a lot of extra features we add on top of that to the normal Word or Excel experiences. So looking at the screen, I've got on my left side here, I'm in my docs area, and I've got a bunch of different tables here, which are all customizable tables. I've also got my facts, issues, entities, tasks, and notes. And so I'll cover some of these in the demo as we go along. But just looking at our facts here, you can see currently we've got none. So as part of this workflow, we're going to develop some facts for us to be able to use in things like building a chronology and so on. I've already obviously populated a bunch of documents into our table already, but it's really easy to add documents. So I can just click to upload documents, grab some documents from my computer and upload them into the table. What you can see here is we've uploaded a bunch of emails. Importantly, this email had an attachment, so we've pulled that out. That'll be kept as its own document. It'll be cross-referenced to the original email. When I'm uploading things, I might want to add a custom tag. So this will be Lens and new docs. So this will keep these new documents with this particular tag. I could do the same with bundles or add a task to assign it to one of my users. But the idea here is we appreciate that you'll get documents in tranches. So you've got to manage that process as well. But once we upload docs, we'll do some data extraction on them. So they'll be securely run through an LLM in our AWS infrastructure. So all of our infrastructure is built on AWS, and we are very focused on obviously security of data. But the way this will work is our documents will be uploaded and processed, and data will be extracted from them, and then they'll end up in our table, so ready for us to use. Let's return to the workflow I was alluding to. So I'm going to start my workflow from my documents here that I've uploaded. This summary has been automatically generated for me in that process. And I'm going to focus on a review where I'll look for suspicious documents. Now, obviously, that's a bit nonsensical and a bit silly, but the idea here is that you're a lawyer running lots of different cases, and we want to keep it general for the purposes of this demo, but you could imagine focusing a review on a specific fact set or issues or something like that. So the first thing we can do with our documents is just a straight up keyword search. And we want to make this really easy to do because keyword searching is still very valuable and useful when you're looking for stuff where you've got a good keyword to look for. So I just click to search here, and I can choose which column in my table I want to search for. So there's a bunch of options here. I'm going to select for the text content of the document, and I'm just going to type suspicious. So what this will do now for me is it'll rejig my document, my table, to show only the rows that match my queries. So in this case, I've got one document that ends up having this keyword match in the document text of suspicious. So if we can take a quick look at that, I can jump into this document and pretty quickly see, sure, it's got the word suspicious in it, but it doesn't really look like a suspicious document in the true sense. My keyword search didn't quite hit the mark there, so I'm going to cancel out of that. But in this sort of situation, it makes sense to run a query on our docs. So a query is really easy to do. We just click the query button, and I can ask a query. So is this document, so just going to suspicious. All right, so I'm going to ask a query. And what a query will do, Nikki, is instead of looking across all of the documents as a whole and trying to answer this question, it's going to go through every document one by one individually, look at this query from the perspective of each document. So it's going to need a new column for that. I can choose a different output format, so I can just get it to answer that query in plain text or yes or no, or I could customize some options here, maybe highly suspicious, not suspicious, medium suspicion. I'll just keep it simple and do a yes, no answer. And equally, I could make this new query. Sorry, Nikki.
Len, so the first one you searched, that was a keyword search, but it sounds like a kind of sentiment, conceptual analysis of the content of the documents. Is that fair to say?
So what this is actually going to do is it's going to run an LLM focused search on each document, taking the text from every document individually and say in the context of that document's text, what's the answer to this question? Right. And so this is where we're very much using modern LLMs to solve this problem. So one more thing to do in my query, I'm just going to select, I could have this column appear in my current table, but I'm going to make it easier and just put it in a new table. I'm just going to space that out. So now I create my query, and what it's going to do is obviously the LLM's going to go through all of those documents individually. I think there were something like 88 documents in our set at the moment, and it's going to answer that question I've asked on a document by document basis. So you see here, I'm in a new table. You can see on the side, I've just been taken to a new table. All the same underlying documents. These tables I'm showing you again are pulling from the same underlying data set. We're always looking at a single source of truth. The query then gets run on a document by document basis. And what we're going to see produced for us is an answer to our query for each document, which we can see here in this column. When we do this, it's going to sort us to show us the yeses at the top. There's some unsures and some no's down the bottom here. So what we see this is really doing, and this is a really powerful way we think to use LLMs for these sort of document reviews, is it just allows us to drill down to subsets of documents pretty quickly. Now, that's not to say I would necessarily not conduct other queries to make sure I've covered all my bases in terms of not leaving gaps and outsourcing too much to the LLM. But the modern LLMs are very capable on these per document context reviews. So we think they're a really good way to help us review information more quickly. So now that's run, I'm just going to customize my table. And again, as I said, you can customize all of your tables by adding different columns. I should say by selecting which columns you want to see in your table. So I'm going to select a couple of columns here that I think are useful. And I might just move these around to change the ordering. I've already got the sort applied, which is putting the yeses at the top. So it's sorting by that column we just created our query on. But I'm going to just help with my review. I'm going to add a filter, and I'm just going to filter down to show where the suspicious document question was answered as yes. And so very quickly, we've customized our table to be really simple, really clean. And it's just showing us the answers to that query we asked in a single document. So I've gone down to 18 documents now. So in terms of the workflow, this is again what we've done. We've started from our full document set. We've done some keyword searching, see where that took us. Didn't get us very far. So we've now done this query type of search, which is doing that LLM content searching on a document by document basis. That's helped us narrow a list of documents down to 18. And again, it's a silly question of is a document suspicious, but you can imagine a real question being asked for your particular case you're running. And then for the next part of my workflow, I obviously want to drill down further. So this is where I'm going to switch to reviewing the actual documents. It's really easy to do. I just click review. This will then change the interface to be maintaining effectively the same list, the exact same list as in my table on the left of the screen here. So these are the documents still. I could still search them, but it's going to then present me with the document itself, which is the PDF version our software processed in terms of, in the case here, of our file. I can also see the underlying table data as well. But typically you'd be reviewing your documents for what they actually contain, right? Yeah. So once I'm in this review mode, again, I'm coming from this workflow of starting broad and gradually refining and narrowing down. And I'm going to start some analysis on this particular document. So I can just click this button to bring out a side panel that allows me to run analysis. And within this analysis, I've already got a nice little summary here, so I can read that again. But I've got these very handy annotation tools, so I can start just marking up documents and annotating them by doing different things. So these are just things you might use when you're just quickly running around a document. I'll just delete those. But the most common way, I guess, we as litigators for most documents would be to highlight things. So here I'm going to just quickly read this document. Okay, I've got it. I think this first sentence is something that's important for my review. So I'm going to select to highlight that. That'll then pull that particular bit of text out. So again, I'm not looking now as the document as a whole. I'm looking at particular information with it. I've pulled out a particular quote I want to do. And this is where I start to get to my sort of linking exercise, right? So we've got the documents to start with, but I want to end up with a refined list of facts on this suspicious search I'm doing, I guess, if you like. So this first quote here or extract I've highlighted, I'm going to create a fact for that. And I'm going to say this is, and lawyers love to write facts in their own sort of ways, right? I'm going to say this is Sarah tells this is how, and I'm just going to keep that quote there. So my fact is, I guess, the event occurring. It's not really an email in itself isn't a fact. It's obviously what the email represents in terms of real world conduct or communications. So this is a fact I'm creating. It's got various things I can add here, but it's already populated the date to match the email. So that's okay. I'm just going to leave all that and I'm going to add this fact. So again, I'm now in my sort of focus review mode where I'm going through documents one by one and making effectively annotations, but linking them to facts I'm creating. So let's do another document quickly.
Are you
Here's some
doing
more
that?
text.
Len,
Yeah.
can I just ask, are you able to work with a team in this platform?
Yeah, so it's full real-time collaboration. In fact, our pricing, which I'll come to the end, allows any number of case team members to be part of the case, and you can just add them through email invitations, and there'll be a case admin who can manage, the users in the case.
That's fantastic. So presumably you can assign review tasks to different members and gradually work through that review together collaboratively in the platform.
Yeah, certainly. And in terms of managing tasks for reviews, that's a big piece. And why we have a whole dedicated tasks section over here where we'll assign things to individuals that will send out emails to those people to make sure they've got notice of something me as a partner might want them to look at, a new round of documents or whatever. Yeah, the task tracking is pretty robust as well. But in terms of this review I'm doing now as the lawyer, I've found another quote that I like. So I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'll be quicker this time. And then, so I'm adding that fact. And then this email looks interesting, Nikki. I won't repeat it on orally, but there it is. So I'm going to just, in this one, I just think the whole thing's worthy of being linked to a fact. And I'm just going to clear that out and add a fact for that one. So what I've done there is, again, just to run through, we've started with the broad documents. We narrowed them down with our query. We then drilled into them with this review and analyze approach where we were actually doing very focused annotations on particular documents relevant to my suspicious activity question. And what I've done there is I've generated then some key facts from that. So what you will see, I was within the documents generating facts, but these are then recorded in a separate table that allows us to go from that common situation of having lots and lots of documents. We've got to sort through them and refine them. And the facts we pull out of them are then refined in our facts table. But we can do everything in terms of customization, the same thing in this facts table as we saw before. You'll see here the facts are written. So these are the bits of text I showed when I add the facts. But importantly, the documents are linked here. So I can just click on the document from within the facts table and it'll take me back exactly to the annotation I created. So importantly, this was, you remember, an annotation I did. If I ever want to go back to it, I can just run back to the linked document. So I might want to do something else on that document. And this is an important piece of our software, is jumping link between these sort of various links in our case. And again, joining the dots in a real sense. So maybe I want to do another little quick annotation here, underline this part, link that to a new fact, and away we go. And then I might jump to that fact from where I am. The workflow here was able to pretty quickly, and probably not realistically in realistic time, because this takes a long time to actually do to review these documents. But the value of doing the query search was that we narrowed the document set down to a more realistic list for me to do this review in an efficient way. And I've ended up with a table of facts. Obviously, then we can do things like pull this out into a Word document, so we can download this if we want to use that for presenting to the court or whatever. And again, we can customize this facts table in any way we want. One other thing though, Nikki, I know we're short on time, so I just wanted to highlight some of the key things. One other thing though, that is a bit of a drawback dealing with this sort of tabulated way or a spreadsheet-like way of managing litigation. Sometimes you just, as a lawyer, want to really just write a long document that has a detailed note with sections and paragraphs, and capturing that email in a table isn't that easy. It can get pretty unwieldy if you have one row that contains an enormous amount of text. So we think about that problem a lot. I think about that in my own practice. And so this is where our notes come in. So our notes, I'm just going to jump back into a document table, and I'm going to take you to, let me just refresh the page. I was clicking too fast, obviously. So if we jump back to our documents table, and I'm going to find a document here that I wanted to look at again, and I've got an agreement here. I'm just going to open this agreement. So an agreement might be a particular type of document. It doesn't really express a single fact or even a series of facts. It has a whole lot of information in it. Obviously, the fact for this agreement is the agreement was entered into, which is pretty easily stated. But I want to capture a lot more detail around what that event meant in terms of obligations being imposed, and writing that in a table as a fact is unwieldy. So I'm going to come in here and create a new note. So notes are really cool. They're similar to the other sorts of tables, but they allow us to effectively have this handy little notepad we can drag around the screen. I can open it in its own window. And this will then sit on top of what I'm looking at underneath. So I'm going to call this Len's review of. And in this note, I can then start typing whatever I want, and I can review agreement and just write this as a normal note. I've got full formatting capabilities, so I can change text. I can add headings, lists of questions.
This is so
So you can
cool.
just
Like, this then sits with this. So when you open it, presumably in notes, you still have the link back to the confidentiality agreement. So it's essentially like having a sticky note on an agreement or a handwritten note that you keep with it, but it's all digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what lawyers will often do with these, they'll have an Excel and they'll have a set of Word documents and they'll try and keep them in sync. It's really hard though. So I'm going to do exactly what you just said, which is map this to or link this, I should say, to my confidentiality agreement. So I'm actually creating links. I'm even going to link it to a new fact as well, I think, just to show you how that would work. So I could link it to multiple places. And then whenever I'm back in my table, so I close out of that, if I go to my documents list again, and again, this is imagining I've forgotten about that confidentiality agreement. I was working on it last week, but I want to jump back into it. So I can look for my confidentiality agreement. There it is. And my note here is ready for me to go again. So it's going to keep this linking. These cells within the table are pretty powerful with this link feature. They're not just capturing raw data. They're really allowing us to link, and I can always access notes from the side panel really easily too. Yeah, that's just another feature we think is really meeting this sort of gap in terms of the traditional tools like Excel and Microsoft Word when it comes to this tabulated style of managing litigation.
That's great. Thank you so much for showing us this, Len. I can tell from the platform and everything I'm seeing around it that there's probably much more that you can do within it as well.
I was going to show you something which is I have to mention because we're pretty proud of it, is our transparent pricing. Unlike a lot of legal tech software that you go to their website, you'll never know what you're going to pay until you've gone through a lengthy trial period. We're very upfront in our pricing. So this is all published on our website. And how it works is we charge on a per case basis. So rather than say how many users want to be using the software, we say how many cases do you want to run within the software. That then allows things like dispersing out the cost of actually running cases in Litigaze. And it also allows this ability to go from small cases that are low cost right through to managing bigger litigation, which obviously involves a high price. But yeah, that's something we're pretty passionate about in terms of hopefully modernizing what the current legal tech state is. And just on that as well, we offer fully free access to the software. So rather than having to sign up for a trial, you can just go in today and start using Litigaze for free.
That's great. So, Len, how can people find out more about Litigaze?
You can feel free to reach out to me. I'm len@litigaze.com, probably the best way on email, or get me on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. And we will put a URL for Litigaze across the bottom of the screen so people can find out a little bit more on the website. One thing I just want to mention for everyone, although Len is based in Australia, Litigaze is completely jurisdiction agnostic, right? So it doesn't matter where you are. If you are a litigator, this is a powerful platform. So, Len, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really terrific. So interesting to see.
Cool. Thanks, Nikki.
Pleasure. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.